Hi everyone, Jeremy here from Davinci Studio, and to do a quick video to share with you how to use our explainer pack for Davinci Resolve. It is now available for sales on our website, so if you end up purchasing it, thank you very much. And we're now gonna get into how to use it, what are the optimal way to combine elements together so you can get the most out of it. So if you're ready, let's check it out. Alright, so once you've downloaded the pack, you can just double click on the zip file to unzip it, and then you will get a folder. In the folder, you have a couple of things: the license, the installation instruction, the DRFX, and the font. Please make sure to install all the fonts, otherwise the title will not work because Davinci will not know what font to replace it with. So just select all the font provided, which in this case is only the font pop-in, and then double click on it to start the installation process. You can also drag and drop all those fonts directly to the font folder on your computer. Then you can simply double click on the DRFX file to start the installation process. Just select install, and then you can go over to Davinci Resolve. Once in Davinci Resolve, you'll be able to find the pack under Effect, Title, Video Editor Studio, and then here you can just scroll down to the explainer pack. Then here you'll find a couple of categories. You have background, essential, infographics, maps, toolkit, pointers, and typography. But that's not only it. You'll also be able to find some stuff in Effect. So here, if we close the titles and we go over to Effect, Video Editor Studio, as you can see, we also have an explainer pack section here with a bunch of different effects that are going to be very helpful later on. I'm going to show you how to use some of them. And lastly, we do have a few transitions for this pack. So you will find them directly here in Video Transition, Video Editor Studio, and then here explainer pack. You have a bunch of different transitions that you can use. This video is going to be a bit long. I'm not going to be able to go through all the assets available in the pack because there is more than 100 assets in it, so it will take way too long. But I'm going to try to demonstrate a few key features and how you can combine them together to create a very good video and try to explain and bring your point home as easily as possible while you're editing. So let's get into it. Right now, we're going to start by bringing a background. So if you go to Title again, and then explainer, as you can see, we have a background section. In that background section, we have background that are animated and some that are static. So depending on how subtle you want it to be, sometimes you want to have just a static background that just bring some texture or some element behind but doesn't have any movement, and sometimes you might want to have a bit of movement to keep the thing entertaining and interesting. For static background, we got stuff like, for example, this mat that I really like. I think that's very iconic and that works great for an explainer video. We got a dark version of it, which is generally more popular for social media and has been widely popularized lately. You can add some distortion effect to it if you want. We got some more classic paper texture right here with this one. And so as I've mentioned, those are static. There is no movement, but you can adjust a few details. For example, here on the grid, you can change the color of the line going through. You can also change here the vignetting. So if you want to increase the vignette or reduce the vignette, you can do that right here. You can change the color of that vignette. You can change also the color of the background right there. So you can modify a bunch of stuff on each of those static assets. But then if you want to have some movement, we do have some assets that have basically animation. So here we have that texture background. So right now, as you can see, we basically have some texture changes. You can adjust basically the color, the saturation, the contrast, gain, lift, etc. To really get the tonality that you want. For example, if right now that's too distracting and you want something that is darker, you can always bring the gain down and get something that's going to be more subtle. You can also adjust the vignetting as well on this, and you can adjust the shake movement. So you can either choose to have it being smoother or being a bit more frenetic. So we have a lot of different texture background like this one. We got some paper, concrete, etc. Right now, I'm just going to use the classic explainer matte, which I really like. I'm just going to extend it, and that's going to be our base to this video. All right, the next section, we have the essentials. So this is a list of different tools that are very helpful to help you display some basic data like contours, bullet point, timelines, etc. They are just staples that are gonna come over and over while you editing, I think. So for example, here we have a bullet point. So I'm gonna drag that in. And if you play it, as you can see, we have that check-in coming in. We can choose to have it being a check or a cross. As usual, you have control over the animation in length. So right now the animation in is about 2 seconds, but we can choose to have it being a lot faster. For example, here we can choose to be half a second. That way right now it's going to come into place very quickly. As you can see right now when I'm playing, I might drop a few frames at the beginning. Depending on the power of your computer, you might drop some frames and not get real-time playback. Quick way around this, right now I've already have it activated, but is to go over to playback, then here select render cache and switch from none to smart. That's just gonna bring here that red bar that's gonna just turn to blue, and when it's turned to blue, you're gonna be able to play things without any drop frame, and you're gonna get real-time playback right here. So that's just a quick tip in case you don't have a powerful computer, or some of our assets, for example, the infographic, are a bit heavier. So definitely that's gonna come clutch in those kind of scenarios. For any of our assets, you have control over the animation length in second, as I just demonstrated, but also the animation in and the animation out. Right now, by default, we have slide up, meaning that the title is coming from bottom to the top. But then here we can choose to have zoom in, zoom out, pan left, pan right, slide up, slide down, fade in, but also no animation if you don't want to have any animation at the beginning. Same thing here for the animation out. You can choose between all those different parameters as well. Another title that you could use here, for example, is a counter. So here we have that highlight counter. It's basically counting from the starting value to a final number, and you can display it in dollar. You can choose to be percentage. You can choose to be yen, dollar, whatever you want. So the way it works is you have a prefix and a suffix line. Anything that you're going to add on the prefix line gonna appear before the counter, and then anything you're gonna add here on the suffix line gonna basically appear after the counter. So you can really combine those in a different way to display any value you want. Right now, for example, if instead of having a large number, you just want to display percentages on smaller values, we could choose to count, for example, from like 45 to maybe, let's say 238, I don't know. And right now we just need to add in suffix a percentage. You will now count directly from that number to the final number, and we'll have the percentage count being displayed. So there is a lot of way to use those counter. I have a more in-depth tutorial on the different parameters for those kind of techniques. I will put a link in the description below. We've also added some basic loaders, meaning that here you can load any image and animate it fairly easily. So you can just select here an image, bring it directly inside of Resolve, and then you will have a mask around it. You can then reposition that image inside of the mask, and you can displace that image. You get multiple shapes you can choose from. So here you have like a classic rectangle, you get a circle, you get hexagon, and you get an octagon, and then you can displace that wherever you want on screen. And that can be like a great way to, for example, here, add the image of a character or a place or something, and then you can start to add some text below it. That just gives you a lot of flexibility to bring one by one things on screen. For example, this could be combined with a timeline. So here, if I were to add the timeline in our view, I can then increase the size of this timeline title, and we're going to drag that down. And then here we'll have that timeline coming in and then displaying a date. We could potentially illustrate that date with an image. So here, if I were to bring that image at the moment where the callout is appearing, right here, I can start to have the animation for the image at the same time right there. And we're just going to place it right above it. So I'm going to take it, and then here, gonna place it right above that callout. We can choose to have, for example, here rectangle, so it's matching a bit more. We're gonna reduce the overall size, so it's matching here the dimension of our callout, and I'm gonna displace it slightly lower like this. So that's how you can start to combine the titles with each other to create more complex and interesting composition. So you will have the date coming in, and then straight up with that information, you will get an image as well. Timeline style of title can be used in sequence to basically create a continuity. It's a bit long to explain. I have a full video going in detail about how to use those kind of title and that specific technique. I will link to it again in the description below so you can just see a bit more in depth, or you can stack them to create longer and longer timelines. But right now, let's see the next category, which is infographics. So here you will find a bunch of different infographics that are generally based into comparison, to just compare one data to another. For more complex infographic, we have a full-on infographic pack that in that case is made to compare more data. Those titles are mostly made to make comparison between two data sets. They are pretty simple to use. Here, if I were to just drag that in and show you, as you can see, you have the usual control over the animation. You can then choose the overall size and position as well. The top text, you can toggle them off or on, depending if you want to have them. And then here, obviously, you can replace the color, the text, etc., and everything in between. One quick tip, for example, right here, it's maybe a bit hard to read company A, company B comparison, or like even here, company A. So one thing that you could use is one of the included effect inside of the explainer pack. Right here, if you go to effects, you can use here the background, and that's gonna allow you to separate a bit more your title against the actual background below. So here it just bring a dim background that allow your title to pop a lot more. You have control over the opacity of that background. Right now it's about half, but you can reduce that opacity, or you can increase it until you get almost a solid. At 1, it will be a full solid, but I will recommend to keep it maybe like slightly above half. And that way you have still your background right here, which will work just as well. For example, if we were to bring some footage. So if I were to bring some video footage here in my timeline, as you can see, we can see that video footage, but that's helping the title popping up a lot more compared to when it's not there, as you can see. It's working especially well when you have some footage that is very busy, like it is the case right now with all the cars, all the line, that can be very distracting, as you can see. And if we increase that, that really help for the readability of the title. We're gonna come back to the effect later on. Right now, let's just bounce back to our titles with the next category, which is the map toolkit. So we have a full-on map pack that is more complex and have a lot of region, but we wanted to give you some tools to display countries. So to do that, we've created a new system that stack map on top of each other. So here you have, for example, the world map that will be your base layer. If we try to bring that in, as you can see, we can have like a normal world map coming in. Nothing crazy about it. That's just like a simple map. You can adjust the overall position. You can adjust the size. You can adjust the color, shadow, glow, background, etc. But here we can start to stack another map on top of it. So I'm gonna select country for world map, and we're gonna drag that above the world map. And as you can see now, we have the USA right above the first base white layer. We can obviously change the color of the USA. So here I can make it green, I can make it blue. You can choose basically between any color you want. You can adjust here the shadow, you can adjust the glow, and same here with the background. But it's not only the USA. Here you have a drop down where you can basically select any country in the world. So for example, if we want to select France, rather than scrolling around and trying to look for France, you can start to tap France on your keyboard and it will just bring you here to the word France. So now we have France being displayed on screen. Same thing here if we want to select, for example, Australia. We will do exactly the same process, and now we'll have Australia being displayed. You can see now how we could start stacking those on top of each other to really display any country we like. So you can start to have them coming in, for example, at different time if you're doing an explanation. One way to have an animation is simply to have a fade in. Here, for example, you can play around with that fade in animation and have a simple fade in animation for your country. You can also go to your transition and drag transition on top of it to get an animation in. And then you can do that for each country. So right now, if I basically duplicate my country, I can then select another one, being the United States, for example. And now we can repeat that process as much as we want to display any country that we might need to display. We've added a few other tools that can be helpful in the map toolkit. You have two basically small callout / pointers to display city or to display some specific point on the map. So we have, for example, this one right here, which I think is my favorite. It's very simple, but it does the job very well. You can then reposition it, place it wherever you may need. And then here, for example, we can place it on New York, replace the text with New York, and we now have our callout. Just keep in mind that the more country you're gonna start to stack on top of each other, maybe the slower the playback gonna be, and the more of a hard time you're gonna have, because Davinci gonna need to process a bunch of stuff. So I would recommend, once you've created maybe your map, to start to either render in place or creating compound clip. That way it will be easier for you to just like first keep organized, but also get better playback. So you can simply here, once you've selected all your country, then select all of them, create a compound clip. But here, as you can see, just by compounding it, that can help you to just keep your timeline a bit more organized, and then you can render it in place. Just make sure you do that with transparency, with like the right codec, like something like Apple ProRes 444, for example. That way you will retain transparency. Just a quick tip right there. And then lastly, in the map toolkit, we got some lines. So here you can just drag, for example, line to link, let's say the USA to Australia. And then you can choose between the number of point that you want to have on that line. Right now, I'm just going to select one. That way we're going to have just like the depart point and the arrival point. And then you can just go to line control. We're going to place the first point right here on the US. And then we're going to place the arrival point on Australia right there. You can then adjust the style of that line. You can adjust the style of the circle if you want them to be transparent, if you want them to be slimmer, to be bigger. You can do all that right here. Now next we got pointers. So here you have a wide variety of pointers you can choose from to really highlight what needs to be highlighted on your composition. So you got some arrows, for example, right here. We could use it on the map if you want to point at another place. For example, right now we're gonna displace this and we're gonna point it at Australia again. So this is gonna help us to just point the attention of your where we want, in this case Australia. So there is really a lot of different pointers you can use. There is some callouts, there is some arrows, there is some circle, shape, etc. They're just like very neat and useful tool to use. I've already quickly touched on that, but as I've mentioned, the more titles you're going to start to stack, the harder it's going to be for Davinci Resolve to process it. For example, here, if I'm starting to add another pointer on top of already the maps, the line, etc., there might be a lot of different things that Davinci Resolve need to process. And right now, if I play it, as you can see, I'm getting only 8 FPS playback, which is not ideal. That's what you want to have, that render cache right here into smart. That way it will process while you're playing at 7-10 FPS those titles. So then when you're gonna play it a second time, you're gonna get real-time playback this time. So that's something that is quite important to have like a smooth and enjoyable experience. There is not much that we can do about it. Those titles are just heavy and just like stacked on top of each other. They are basically harder to play. Now when I'm playing it, as you can see, I'm getting 30 FPS without any issue. Now lastly, in the title category, we get typography. Those titles are made to help you display text in an interesting way. That can be quote, that can be information, article, etc. And they have some very interesting tool developed in it to help you highlight a certain passage of a quote or an article in a very neat way. We've actually made Typography 10 the sample for this pack, so you can download it and start playing with it to see if that works for you. There is a full video on this if you want to go into more detail and how to use it. I will link to it in the description below. That's why I'm not going to go in depth again about like the nitty-gritty on all the functionality and how to use them. There's a full video on that. But basically here, the core principle is that you can just drag here that text, and you're gonna have an animation in 2 times. First, the overall text coming into play, and then we're gonna have a highlight animation that gonna put an emphasis on a certain part of the text. For example, for this one that is made to display articles, you can then just here change the text that is display. You can change the different logo here that is display as well, and you can adjust the highlight with the overall position of that highlight, with the length of the highlight as well. You can adjust the height, the length, the color, etc. Directly right here. Some of them get some specific functionality, but that's the core of it with that highlighting feature that basically gonna start to be used in different form, like that bullet point, like that article, or paragraph, or even a lower third, which doesn't do a highlight, but like an underline instead, for example. So that's pretty much it for the titles inside of the experiment pack. As you can see, there is quite a lot of stuff that you can use and combine together to really focus the attention on your viewer on what is most important. Now we're gonna just move over to the effect available in the pack that can, again, allow you to just really put an emphasis on what matters and add some really interesting detail to polish up your video. So right here in Effect, Explainer Pack, we have all those effects that we can use. I'm going to demonstrate that by dropping them onto an icon. So I'm going to just bring that rocket launch icon. This can be an image, this can be a photo, this can be just many things. I'm going to just reduce the overall size of it, and I'm going to use that to demonstrate each of those effects. The way the effects are working is by directly dragging them onto the clip. It's not going to be doing anything if I drag them in the timeline. You need to drag them onto something. Therefore, they can be used directly on a title, or they can be used directly on an image or a video. So I'm going to quickly go through pretty much all of them very fast. So right now we have that 3D rotation effect that you can drag directly on it, and now you can have access to the different rotation point, the X, the Y, and the Z axis, as well as the Z move, and that can just allow you to reshape and give a more like 3D aspect to whatever you're bringing in. For example, if you want to pin something to a wall, or if you want to adjust the perspective, that's the tool for you. Then we have an animation in and out, which is something we've included that is already in our free starter pack. This is just a simple tool that allows you to have an animation in and out to any images, and I think that's very powerful. I have a full video on it as well. Just look that up. We have then the background, so you can simply here bring a background and you will have that dim background as we've already saw previously. Then we have blank media. This one's going to be better demonstrate on an image. For example, it's just going to act as a mask. So here, if I drag that onto that image, as you can see, that's just going to create that mask right here with a built-in background with like an opacity right there. And then you will be able to adjust the border and the media within that mask. So that can be a great effect whenever you need to display a reference image, and you can start also using that in combination with text or pointer. So for example, if you then needed to bring like a reference image, and then we're going to add a pointer above it, and we're going to displace this to circle something specific on screen, we can do that. Then we can add, for example, an arrow, and again, displacing that arrow. We can then start to display some text. So here I could use this one, for example, then adjust the overall position. We can use that as a banner. And right now already with just a few clicks, we've managed to create a pretty interesting composition. Then going back to our effect, we also have here blank media plus caption. So it's basically the same thing, but here we have some added caption to it, but also the mask will take the entire shape of the media that is being placed within. Then we have a blink in and out animation. So here that's just very similar to the animation in and out. It's just doing a blink animation for the in and for the out. Then we got borders. So here, if we drag that onto our icon, we get 2 borders. So right now they are green and yellow. We can play around with the position of those borders and the colors. Then another very useful effect is here continuous zoom. So you can just drag that onto, for example, here your image, and you will get a continuous zoom. Right now we had already the blink still on this one, but the continuous zoom is basically gonna go, from the initial value that you set to the last value that you set at the end of the clip. You can play around here with the zoom scale if you want that zoom to be less or more subtle, and you can choose between the different curve if you want to have something linear, or if you want to play around with, for example, an expo or a back curve, etc. We have then dual screen, which basically here create a dual screen, as you can see. So basically with this, you will have here the media that has been dropping off on the right side, and then whatever is below it. So here, if I were to take another video clip, that clip will stay under. So that can be a great way here to do some comparison between two things. Then we have a glow effect. We got an image texture overlay. So that can be very, very helpful combined with the map. For example, here, if we go back to titles, then here we have the expander pack, map toolkit. I'm taking here the individual country map. By the way, you can choose, any country you want right there. You will not have the individual region, but you will have the country on its own, which I think can be useful if you want to have the individual region. We've made an update with that available in our big map pack. But going back to my point with the effect, here we have a map of the US, and then we can go over to effect, explainer, and then now we can drop image texture overlay. And if we drop that right here onto our clip, as you can see, now we have the US flag inside of the US map. Right now in my case, it has created like a weird artifact thing, is because we have the shadow activated on the map. So we just need to go back to the map here, remove the shadow, and we will not have that. But basically what that effect allows you to do is to add any images inside of a shape. So it will be the same thing here with that rocket. If we were to drop that on the rocket, it will use the rocket as a mask, and then you can add any image you want inside of that mask. So here, if we take our image, we can just drag that in, and now we will have an image inside of whatever shape we drag that on. Then the next one here is levitation. So by dragging that in, we will have an animation that make whatever we drop that on levitate. So now, as you can see, that rocket is levitating, and now we can adjust the smoothness of that levitation. Then we have line highlighter that can allow us to add more highlighting effect. We have magnifying glass that can allow us to do a zoom on an image. So here we have that magnifying glass here, and we can displace that glass, for example, to zoom right there on that person, and then increase the magnification size. Then we have paper edge that's gonna add some paper edge to an image or an icon or anything. Then we're gonna have paper edge screen, which is gonna do something very similar, just it's gonna be animated. And then we have paper unfold that allows us to have an animation. So I'm gonna delete everything I have right now in that image, and I'm gonna select paper fold, drag that on, and as you can see now, we have that paper folding animation coming into screen. So again, that's a great way to, for example, here, bring in an image, and then you can add some text, you can add some pointers, etc. You can bring in multiple image. That's just like a cool, interesting animation. And then we get the shadow, and we get another pointer, which is very close to the magnifying glass effect. So that's pretty much it for all the effect available inside of the pack. Now, lastly, we have some video transition that you can find here under video transition, expander pack. We have some very simple here shaped transition. I'm gonna bring an example video right here. We're gonna drag the edges of those clips. But now basically you can see it's some basic panel transition. We get some diagonal version of that. If for whatever reason you're getting another reaction, just drag it slightly, and then it will just reprocess the transition, and you will get something that works properly. Just sometimes with Resolve, it can have those kind of bugs where it kind of just need to recache or reprocess the transition somehow. It does happen lately a bit with Davinci Resolve 19. Hopefully they will just fix that. But I had that happening with a few native transitions to Davinci Resolve, as well as some of our assets. So if that ever happen, just drag it slightly and it will fix the problem. But yeah, as you can see, we got some panel slider, we got some RGB glitch, we got some shape, some slide, slices, some spin, vignette, and a zoom. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I know this video is very, very long. If you're still here, thank you for sticking with me and watching everything through. I'm probably gonna try to make some more video in the future going into more like example and how to create them. Yeah, I just wanted to show you that you can really do a lot with them by combining them, and maybe in the future, let me know in the comment if you want me to do more demonstration on the specific type of video that you can make with it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate you sticking around, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Speed up your workflow and create better videos using the pack available on our website, including titles, transition, and templates built only for Davinci Resolve. Get started today by downloading our free starter pack that contains over 150 elements. Link in the description below or at videoeditorstudio.com.